Ideal state. Plato's ideal state is also known as a republic. In yesterday's class, we have discussed about the important features of Greek political philosophy, the important principles of sophist philosophy, the theory of education of Socrates. And in today's class, we are going to discuss Plato's theory of ideal state, Plato's ideal state. Plato's ideal state has six important points. The first point is Plato has described human soul into three elements. According to Plato, in every human being, there are three elements. They are reason, courage, and appetite. Reason, courage, and appetite. These are the three elements of every human being. But these three elements are not equal in all the human beings. They are in disproportion. That means in some people, the element of reason is more. In some people, the element of courage is more. In some other people, the element of appetite is more. So, reason, courage, and appetite are unequally distributed among the human soul. So, this is called as the three elements of human soul. This is the first point. And based on this point, Plato wanted to classify the society into three social groups. These three social groups include philosopher king's class, soldiers class, and workers class. So, according to Plato, the scheme of education will prepare these three social classes in a society. And the people with more element of reason are considered to be philosopher kings. The people with more courage are to be called as soldiers, and the people with more appetite are to be called as workers. These are the three classes of Plato's society. According to Plato, in every human being, there are three elements. These are three elements in a human soul. In every human being, reason, courage, and appetite are the three important elements in every human being. But these three elements are not equally distributed in all the people. For example, in some people, the reason as an element is more. But among certain people, the courage as an element is more. And in the remaining people, the appetite as an element is more. So these three elements constitute a tripartite man. Tripartite man means three elements in a human soul. That is called as tripartite man. So in the tripartite man, according to Plato, there are three elements: reason, courage, and appetite. Based on these three elements, Plato has observed that the society can be classified into three social classes. All the people with more reason as an element are called as philosopher kings. All the people having courage as a major element are to be called as soldiers. All the people who have appetite as an element ought to be called as workers. So these three elements have corresponding three social classes. That means philosophers with reason, soldiers with courage, workers with appetite. So this is how Plato has identified three social classes based on three elements of human soul. So this is the first point. The second point is Plato has suggested the scheme of education to decide on the prevalence of these three elements in human soul. So Plato proposes that all the children should not know about their parents and all the parents should not know about their children. So all the children who are born are to be brought by the state, they are to be given education and all the skills by the state. So education, according to Plato, should be sponsored by the state. It's a state sponsored education. Secondly, the main objective of the scheme of education of Plato is to create three social classes in the society: the philosopher king's class, the soldiers class, and the workers class. These are the three social classes who are to be made out of education. This is the second point. That means the objective of education is to create three social classes in the society. And thirdly, according to Plato, the education should contain the skills for physical development and also mental development. All the children are to be developed both physically and psychologically. So it's a comprehensive education in which all the children will be given training and skills for the physical development and also for the psychological development. And the fourth point is the Plato scheme of education also guarantees the skill development for soldiers, for philosopher kings, and for workers. So these are some of the elements of Plato's scheme of education. Plato's scheme of education categorizes the education into two types: primary education and higher education. All the children who have crossed the age of 20 are eligible for higher education and they should get pass in the primary education. So, from the newborn child to the child of 20 years, primary education will be given. This primary education has three important phases. From 0 to 6 years, it is first phase. From 7 years to 14 years, it is second phase. From 15 years to 20 years is the third phase. So these are the three phases of primary education. And in the first phase, all the children are given literary songs, words, word building, small mathematics, additions, subtractions, up to the age of 6 years. From 7th year to 14th year, all the children are given physical training, physical exercises, and environmental science, like the botany, zoology of modern times. All the children are given mathematics, logic. So this is the second phase of Plato's scheme of education. In the third phase of Plato's primary education, all the children are to be given skills on swimming, horse riding, adventure sports, besides mathematics, statistics, and other subjects. So at the age of 20 years, all the children are to take an examination. In that examination, if the child gets through, that child is eligible for higher education. If the child does not get through the examination at the age of 20 years, the child should remain as worker throughout her life, his or her life. And Plato's scheme of education has not discriminated between men and women. That's the positive point. So Plato's primary education is primarily targeted to build the working class in the society. The working class is required for doing agriculture, handicrafts, trade and commerce, and various other things. And at the age of 21 years, the higher education starts. Again, higher education has two phases, from 21 years to 30 years and 31 years to 35 years. So all the children who have crossed at the age of 20 years and who are qualified in the primary education with pass marks are only eligible for higher education. From 21 years to 30 years, all the children are given the higher education, particularly the military training, philosophy, logic, laws, and various other aspects. So, at the age of 30 years, the child has to undergo an examination. That examination is very crucial because the children who are passed the examination are only eligible for the second phase of higher education. And the children who fails at the age of 30 years can remain as soldiers throughout their life. So this is how tell you from the beginning. Plato's scheme of education is aimed at creating three social classes in the society. These three classes include the philosopher kings, soldiers, and workers. So, his scheme of education is aimed at creating these three social classes. Secondly, Plato's scheme of education is sponsored by government. It's a government education. It's sponsored by the state. There is no role for private education in Plato's scheme of education. And thirdly, Plato's scheme of education does not discriminate man and woman, a boy child and a girl child. All the children are eligible for education. There is no gender discrimination. And fourthly, Plato's scheme of education provides the physical training and also the mental training, the psychological training and physical training. Both are combined in Plato's scheme of education. This is one thing. And Plato's scheme of education also provides skills for workers, for soldiers, and for philosopher kings. So it's a comprehensive education with values, value based education. And Plato's scheme of education has two important phases, the primary education and higher education. The primary education is from 0 years to 20 years, from the just born baby to the 20 years of child. The primary education will be available. From 21 years to 35 years, that is higher education is available. So Plato's primary education is the first phase of education. Within primary education, again, there are three phases, from 0 to 6 years, 7 years to 14 years, and 15 years to 20 years. These are the three phases in the primary education. After the completion of 20 years of education, every student is to undergo an examination. That examination is very crucial because whoever passes the examination are only eligible for higher education. The children who fail in the examination should remain as workers throughout their life. So at 20 years, all the working class is made. Again, from 21 years to 30 years, The first phase of higher education starts. In Plato's scheme of education, there are two types of education: primary education and higher education. Primary education is up to 20 years, and from 21 years to 35 years, higher education is available. And between 21 years to 35 years, there are again two phases. From 21 years to 30 years, there is one phase. From 31 years to 35 years, there is another phase. All the children who have got through the examination at 20 years and passed in the examination are eligible for higher education. They can take education from 21 years to 30 years in matters of physical education, in matters of adventurous sports like swimming, horse riding, and others, in matters of logic, in matters of law, economy, politics. So all the training is given up to 30 years. And at the age of 30 years, another important test examination will be conducted. And students who get through in this examination are only eligible for the second phase of higher education, the second phase of higher education from 31 years to 35 years. And students who fail in the examination should remain as soldiers throughout their life. And from 31 years to 35 years, this is the second phase of higher education. This is also called as the philosopher king's training. All the children who got through the examination at the age of 30 years and passed the examination are eligible for taking training for philosopher kings. They can become philosopher kings in the state. So these philosopher kings will be taught about the law, the logic, economy, polity, exports and imports, foreign policy, and other matters, the philosophical foundations of public administration. So these things are to be taught, and all the children who complete 35 years of training, they can become the philosopher kings, and they can take employment in the court of the king, in the court of the state, in the state. They are becoming the employees, the royal employees in the court. So this is how the higher education provides for the establishment of the soldiers class and philosopher kings class. This is the second point. The third point is Plato's theory of communism. Plato's theory of communism believes that philosopher kings and soldiers are called as the ruling classes. These ruling classes should be controlled not to indulge in corruption. If they indulge in corruption, the state will destroy itself. That's why Plato wanted that the philosopher kings and soldiers should have some reforms. This is called as communism. Plato's communism has four important aspects. The first one is the ruling classes, the philosopher kings and soldiers, should not have marriage or personal family. They should not have family. They should not have marriage. Prohibition of marriage. Prohibition of marriage of philosopher kings and soldiers. Of course, workers can marriage. Workers can have the marriage. But the philosopher kings and soldiers should not have the marriage. They should also not have the personal family life. They should not have personal family. Thereby, they cannot crave for more property, more wealth for the family. Since there is no family, they work for the state.
अच्छा
So this
पहले
is
से
the aim of hello,
हाँ पहले से बोलो सर मैंने सुनी क्लास
madam.
हाँ पहले से बोलो मैंने सुनी क्लास अभी जॉइन हुई
I'll complete it and go to next class, next lesson.
अय्यो
So philosopher kings and soldiers are prohibited from having family, and they should also not be having property, personal property. And likewise, he also proposed some marriage reforms, and he encouraged women education. In fact, Plato is considered as the first feminist who advocated freedom of women in the political philosophy. So these are some of the points of Plato's communism of wives. And after that, Plato has suggested that it is only the philosopher kings that should rule the country. The kings should have the philosophical orientation, or the philosophers can directly rule the country. They can become rulers. Then only the evils of the state will be solved and all the problems of the state are well understood and problems will be given practical solutions. So these are the elements of Plato's ideal state. The first one is Plato's classification of human soul into three elements corresponding three classes. The second one is Plato's scheme of education. And the third one is Plato's theory of communism. And fourth one is Plato's philosopher kings, the principle of philosopher kings. And the fifth one is Plato also gave his theory of justice. He says all the people should work together and they should not interfere in the works of others. All the three classes in the society, the philosopher kings, the soldiers, the workers, they should work together, they should develop their skills, and they should not interfere in the matters of others. This is the fifth point. And the sixth point is Plato believed that women should be given more freedom and women also need to have freedom. So these are some of the important aspects of Plato's ideal state. Hello,
हेलो सर।
बोलिए।
पॉलिटिकल साइंस इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन पीडीएफ भेज दे।
Telugu medium
पॉलिटिकल
and English medium.
इंग्लिश मीडियम
Yeah,
पीडीएफ भेजो ना सर।
you have in the last class I'll give you some important questions,
हाँ यस
and
सर।
meanwhile I'll discuss only important questions.
ओके
For
ओके
example, in the first lesson, some important questions are there.
ओके
For example, describe the nature of the Greek city-state. Analyze the characteristics of Greek philosophy, Greek political thought. These two are the important questions. In the second lesson, Plato's theory of ideal state is an important. Plato's ideal state is a very important question. And Plato's ideal state is described in his great book called Republic. Republic is the name of the book written by Plato. Plato has written three books: Republic, Statesman, and the Laws. Republic, Statesman, and the Laws. These are the three books written by Plato. In his first book, Republic, he gave the first ideal state. And he wrote also the second book and third book, Statesman and the Laws. In these books, Plato has modified his position of his ideal state and he gave the second ideal state, the second ideal state in the second book and third book. So, in the second lesson, the first question is important. Examine Plato's theory of Plato's scheme of education and evaluate it. That is very important. And third question, examine Plato's communism and its objectives is also very important. So these are the important questions. Now let us move on to The third lesson, that is on Aristotle. Aristotle is considered as the father of political science. He is also the realist in political science. He has also provided the real solutions for all the problems of his contemporary times. Unlike Plato, Aristotle is a realist. Plato is an idealist. He gave values, he gave ideals. Whereas Aristotle is a realist. His philosophy is called as realist philosophy. Aristotle, can you please mute your phones? Aristotle used inductive method in his political philosophy. What is inductive method and what is deductive method? The deductive method is one which separates the individual from society and attributes all the elements of society to the individual, from general to particular, is called deductive method. Whereas in the inductive method, from particular to general, for example, Aristotle examined many governments of his time, and based on his observations, he has formulated the theory of governments, classification of governments. So that means by bringing examples, by making experiences, observations, he has formulated certain theories. So Aristotle's theory is called inductive method theory. He has employed inductive method in his philosophy. Aristotle has written so many books. Among them, Politics is the main book. And Aristotle also has started an educational institution called Lyceum, while Plato started educational institution called Academy. Aristotle also started an educational institution to give training to young people. That institution is called Lyceum. Aristotle has given his ideal state. Aristotle's ideal state is the best practicable state. According to Aristotle, the ideal state should have certain qualities. The first quality is the ideal state should be nearer to the sea because the sea and coastal area helps the country to have external trade, foreign trade, so that economy can be developed very easily. So he wanted the location of the state should be nearer to the sea, whereas Plato opposed this. Aristotle supported this. And secondly, the amount of population Aristotle suggested. While Plato suggested that only 5,040 people should be there in a city state, where Aristotle says there is no definite number of population. Any number of people can stay in city state. But the city state should have adequate natural resources to feed all the population. If the state do not have the natural resources, it is mere waste of having all the population. If the whole state is covered with a desert, you cannot have food grains production. Then the whole population have to suffer from poverty and destitution. That's why Aristotle suggested that the location of state should be a natural resources location, a location filled with natural resources. And the population of the state should be proportionate to the quantum of natural resources available in the city state. And thirdly, Aristotle also wanted people to have education. But he wanted education only up to the year of 20 years. Within 20 years, all the primary education and higher education, everything should be completed. Beyond that, he does not suggest any education. According to Aristotle, the whole scheme of education should be finished till the age of 20 years. So this is Aristotle's view. And Aristotle wanted six social classes in a city state, while Plato suggested three social classes: philosopher kings, soldiers, and workers. Aristotle suggested six classes: landlords, the employees, the priests, the workers, the soldiers, and the wealthy sections, business people. So these are the sections that are to be there in Aristotle's state. So these are some of the important features. And Aristotle says every state need to have a constitution, and that constitution should have its own moderation and limits. And people can change their constitution. People should have the power to change their constitution according to their social and economic conditions. So this is how Aristotle suggested that a government with the qualities of aristocracy and polity is a good government, and the constitution should have a mixed quality of constitution. It's a mixed constitution with moderation and values. This is how Aristotle has described the ideal state. Ideal state is a best practicable state. Ideal state should not have more values. It should have more qualities of practical problems. It should provide solutions to the practical problems. So these are the, and the second issue is Aristotle has classified the governments. This is called Aristotle's classification of governments. Aristotle has classified the governments into six types. There are three good governments and three bad governments or negative governments, three positive governments or three perverted governments. So the first question here is Aristotle's, the third question, explain Aristotle's concept of best practicable constitution. That's also called as best possible state of Aristotle. And Aristotle's classification of governments has classified the governments into six types: three good governments and three perverted governments. What are the three good governments? The monarchy, aristocracy, polity. Monarchy, aristocracy, polity. Monarchy, aristocracy, polity are the three good governments. And these three good governments have three negative governments, three perverted governments. They are called as tyranny, oligarchy, and democracy. Tyranny, oligarchy, and democracy. These are the three perverted forms of governments. So Aristotle says, in total, there are six types of governments: three good governments and three perverted governments. And these six types of governments are to be classified based on two principles. The first principle is the number of rulers. If one person is ruling, that's called monarchy. If few people are ruling, that's called aristocracy. If all the people are ruling, that's called polity. So, monarchy, aristocracy, polity. Monarchy, aristocracy, polity. Monarchy, aristocracy, polity. These three are called as three positive governments or good governments. For these three good governments, there are three perverted governments or the negative governments, governments with a negative character and negative nature. If one person is ruling the country with all the bad qualities, that's called tyranny. If few people are running the government with selfish needs, that's called oligarchy. If all the people are ruling the country without proper leadership or law abiding nature among the people, that's called democracy. Tyranny, oligarchy, democracy. Tyranny, oligarchy, democracy. Tyranny, oligarchy, democracy. These are the three negative forms of government or perverted form of government. So in total, Aristotle classified the government into six types. This is also called as classification of the constitution. So three good governments and three perverted form of governments. Monarchy, aristocracy, polity. These are the good governments, good constitutions. And for these three good constitutions, there are three different forms of the constitution: tyranny, oligarchy, democracy. These are the three perverted forms of governments. So these are the six governments according to Aristotle. And in fact, Aristotle during his lifetime visited and understood 158 countries of his lifetime. And he has observed all the powers and functions and structure of the governments. And he classified the governments into six types. So this classification of governments by Aristotle is very scientific and very objective. Okay? Then Aristotle also gives us the theory of revolution. Revolution. What do you mean by revolution? According to Aristotle, revolution has four meanings. Revolution has four meanings. The first meaning is if people want a change in the government, a change of government from one government to another government, that's called revolution. Secondly, if the people want change of rulers, the form of government is same, but they want different rulers from one set of ruler to another set of rulers. For example, they don't want one king in monarchical form of government. They want another person as their king. Change of ruler. The change of ruler, when the people demand for change of ruler, that's also called as revolution. And thirdly, if people want a change in the state structure, constitute legislature, executive, judiciary. And among them, in some countries, legislature has more powers. In some countries, executive has more powers. In some countries, judiciary has more powers. So the distribution of powers between legislature, executive, and judiciary are not the same in all the countries. When people want a change in the distribution of powers from one dominant institution to another dominant institution, that's also called as revolution. And fourthly, when people want a change in the state structure, a change in the constitution, that's also called as revolution. So Aristotle, before providing the theory of revolutions, has provided the meaning of revolution. What is revolution? He gave four meanings. After that, he went on to explain the causes for the revolution. The causes for revolution are two types: general causes and specific causes. General causes and specific causes. What are the general causes? According to Aristotle, the economic inequalities among the people is the main cause for the revolutions. In fact, Aristotle has said this some 2,500 years back. Whereas in modern times, our Karl Marx has provided the same thesis for the revolutions. So a revolution occurs when people experience a lot of exploitation, exploitation of poor people by rich people is the main cause for revolutions in any country. Aristotle says if the inequalities, particularly the income inequalities and economic inequalities between rich people and poor people is very wide, revolutions will definitely come. And secondly, if talented people, scholars, intellectuals are not properly given their employment, if they are unemployed, then there is a chance of revolution. So the qualified people should also have a proper job. If proper job is not there, a qualified man can convert himself as a revolutionary. This is the second important aspect. And thirdly, when people do not have the social equality, social respect, dignity, and self respect in the society, whereas some people enjoy the privileges and huge respect when other people do not have the same amount of respect. There is a difference of respect among the people. When the self respect is not properly maintained, that may also lead to revolutions. So these are the general causes: the economic inequalities, the problem of unemployment of intellectuals, and social inequality are the general causes for revolution. And besides this, there are also specific causes for the revolution. Among the specific causes, Aristotle says in a monarchy, a revolution may occur when the king cannot declare his successor. When a king is not in a position to declare his successor, a revolution may come. Or when people find that the successor of a king, or the son of a king, or a nearest relative of a king, or the person who succeeds the king, is not properly selected, that will lead to revolutions in a monarchy. In a tyrannical form of government, when the state repression is more and state uses its power, it unleashes its physical power against the people with punishments, death penalties, people will definitely revolt against the state. In a tyrannical rule, that's called tyranny. Tyrannny. Tyranny. That means cruel rule. When the rule of a king is cruel and king punishes the people and he cannot tolerate the criticism against the state, that is called cruel rule and that's called tyranny. In tyranny, people revolt against the king because people are subjected to heavy punishments and physical power against them. Likewise, in aristocracy, revolutions may occur because in aristocracy, the intellectuals, the scholars, the courageous army men, they rule the country. And when they ignore the problems of the common people, when they do not answer the problems of common people, there is a danger that common people may revolt against the state. So that is also another possibility. So in aristocracy also there is a problem of revolution. In oligarchy, the fourth form of government that he has given, ruled by a few people with bad intentions and selfish motives, is called oligarchy. In such a case, when rulers are preoccupied with their own selfish interests, the common people will revolt against these selfish people. A revolution may come. And likewise, in polity, there is a chance of revolution when there is no proper leader of the country. And in democracy, there is a chance of revolution because when people do not respect the law, do not have proper discipline, and they do not abide by the constitution or law, then one strong man will emerge as a strong leader and he brings revolution in the country. So, this is how he also gave specific causes, general causes and specific causes for the revolution. And Aristotle also provides solutions for the solving the problem of revolutions. And he says, in any country, in any state, the government should see to it that economic inequalities are not very rampant, and there should also have a middle class where the middle class population is more. A revolution may be averted when the state has more middle classes. It can ensure political stability of the country. Middle classes do not have the power or they do not show any inclination towards revolution. So this is another important aspect. So friends, these are some of the aspects. And another important aspect of Aristotle's theory is his support for slavery. He supported slavery. Aristotle supported slavery. The support of Aristotle for slavery is another important aspect of Aristotle's philosophy. Aristotle is a strong believer of tradition, and Greek traditions supported slavery. So Aristotle also supported slavery. This is called as the Hellenic thinking. Hellenic means Greek cultural thinking. Hellenic. Hellenic thinking. Thinking about Greek society, thinking about Greek traditions, Greek culture. And Aristotle is also no exception. However intellectual he is, however a scholar he is, but he's also not an exception to have influence of his social and contemporary times. So he is influenced by the social and political conditions and economic conditions of Greek society. When Greek society supported slavery, Aristotle also accepted it. In modern times, we don't accept slavery. A slave is a living possession of his master. One man dominating the other person is called slavery. It is against the principle of equality. In fact, French Revolution, American Revolution, and all the 20th century societies, all civil societies of 21st century, we do not even think of having the principle of inequality and slavery. But Aristotle supported it. Aristotle supported for his own reasons. He also gave certain reasons for justification of slavery. He says slavery is needed because a master is an intellectual person. A slave is an intellectually deficient person. A person without having intelligence, without having the means to have his livelihood, can only become a slave, according to Aristotle. When a person cannot earn for himself and depend on others for his livelihood, he should be made as a slave. There is nothing wrong in it, according to Aristotle. And Aristotle justified slavery in that manner. If nobody cares an unintellectual person who cannot meet his both ends and who cannot have his own livelihood by himself, and keeping him to the nature and to the mercy of others is not good. That's why Aristotle suggested that an unintellectual person can be under the ownership of a master. There is nothing wrong in it. It is morally good because a person who cannot have his livelihood may depend on the person who can assure livelihood to the slave. This is the first reason. Second reason is slavery is part of Greek tradition. So Aristotle is a staunch supporter of tradition, and for some reasons he is also a conservative thinker. As such, he has supported the Greek traditions. That's why he supported slavery. This is the second reason. Third reason is Aristotle supported slavery because slavery is useful both to the master and slave. It is useful to both master and slave. It is useful to the master because the master can give some works to the slave, otherwise, he has to perform those functions by himself. And by transferring those functions and duties, he can get some relief. He can get some relief, leisure. In that leisure time, he can devote his attention for the affairs of the state, affairs of the government, administration of justice. So, a master can also become a citizen and he can discharge his functions as a citizen by actively participating in the affairs of the government and in the administration of law, by having a slave, because if he is engaged in all his household activities, he may not find leisure. That's why he requires leisure to participate in the affairs of the government. That's why slavery is needed. This is the benefit for the master. And this is also a benefit to the slave because the slave can learn can learn some of the skills for his livelihood through slavery. He can learn, he can get the skills on agriculture, industry, trade and commerce, household activities. In all these activities, he can get the skills, and in course of time, he himself may choose to come out of slavery. This is another important benefit to the slave. So, slavery, according to Aristotle, is very natural. There is nothing wrong in it. And he supported slavery. So, Aristotle also provided another concept called citizenship. Citizenship is another concept as provided. What is citizenship? Again, here he defines citizenship in terms of contribution of citizen to the state. Any person who can actively participate in the affairs of the state or in the administration of justice is called as a state, is called as a citizen. So, not all people are citizens, according to Aristotle. Only those people who can actively participate in the affairs of the state and who can actively participate in the administration of justice are only called as citizens. So, according to Aristotle, many sections of the population are not citizens. Children are not citizens. Old people are not citizens. Women are not citizens. Slaves are not the citizens. Soldiers are not citizens. So, the remaining population who can contribute, who can actively participate in the affairs of the state and in the administration of justice are only called as citizens. And this is called as citizenship. And lastly, Aristotle also has given the concept of justice. Justice. Justice means an opportunity to resolve the conflict is called as justice. In fact, there is a saying in English, justice presupposes conflict. That means where there is a conflict, we require justice. When there is no conflict, there is no need of justice. So justice presupposes conflict. But Aristotle's concept of justice is from the state dimension. He says justice can be classified into two types. One is corrective justice, the second one is distributive justice. Corrective justice and distributive justice. What is corrective justice? According to Aristotle, when the poor people or the citizens of the state or the people of the state experience any injustice or conflict, in the hands of other people, anti-social elements or anti-national elements or any other persons in the society, they may have to face the injustice. And the state comes into existence and it correct the justice, injustice into justice. It correct the injustice into justice. So this is called corrective justice. Suppose there is a robbery, there is an assault, there is a theft, there is a murder, there is an incident of violence. In all these cases, some people are the culprits and some people are the victims. So victims should get justice and culprits should get the punishment. This is called as the corrective justice. The corrective justice. This is called as course correction. The government should correct the course of injustice as justice. And second type is distributive justice. In the distributive justice, Aristotle says the state should provide basic needs to the people. It should distribute the basic needs to the people. It should distribute jobs to the unemployed youth. It should distribute honors and respects and awards to the rich people. So thereby, by the process of distribution of resources, justice can be established. Justice among the poor people can be brought by providing food grains, houses, garments, education, health. These are the basic needs of the people. If these basic needs of the people are not there, people may feel frustrated and dissatisfied. That's why distributive justice is required for the poor people. And secondly, for the educated unemployed youth, they should be given jobs according to their qualifications. They should distribute the jobs. That is also called the distributive justice.
सर
Chepama,
क्या पूरा हो गया? वो हमने पीडीएफ बना के भेजे सर, पॉलिटिकल साइंस।
देते
मैं नंबर भेजूं, मैं डालूं?
आपको ये ऑनलाइन में रहता ना, वेबसाइट में परमानेंटली रहता। आप देख
कौन सा
के आप
वेबसाइट?
ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी का वेबसाइट एक बार आप ये थर्ड लेसन का इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस लेकर सेकंड
सर
क्वेश्चन
मेरे पास
इंपॉर्टेंट है, थर्ड क्वेश्चन इंपॉर्टेंट है।
सर मेरे पास सर मेरे पास
शॉर्ट
बुक्स नहीं है सर।
अरे एक ऐसे टाइप
बुक्स नहीं।
क्वेश्चंस एक्सप्लेन अरिस्टोटल्स व्यूज ऑन स्लेवरी इज इंपॉर्टेंट है। थर्ड
सर
क्वेश्चन
सर सर
एक्सप्लेन
सर वो इम्पोर्टेंट सर भेजो ना, पीडीएफ बना के प्लीज सर, पीडीएफ भेजो।
हम लास्ट क्लास में कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस दिएगा। विल गिव यू सम इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस इन द लास्ट क्लास।
लास्ट
Don't
क्लास
worry
कौन
about it.
सा?
If you attend all the classes, you'll definitely get good marks. And while
यस
listening to
सर।
the, you must also take the running notes from the class. Okay? You will get good marks. Don't worry. Don't worry. Huh? Among the essay type questions, the second and third questions are very important. And in the short answer questions, the second question and third question are important. So you look into it. This is called as
सर मैं नंबर भेजी, मेरे पीडीएफ भेजो भेजो ना सर।
ऐसा हर एक
नहीं
आदमी को
नहीं
ऐसा
नहीं
नहीं देते हम। आप ऐसा
नहीं
हर एक आदमी को नहीं देते। हम क्वेश्चंस
नहीं नहीं,
पूरा
भेजो सर।
वेबसाइट में ही रखते। वेबसाइट में आप देख के वो नोट करो। लास्ट क्लास में कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन दिएगा, है ना? ये हमारा दूसरा क्लास है और चार क्लास अलग है और क्लास चार क्लास ना है। यू हैव फोर मोर क्लासेस, सो काइंडली वेट फॉर देम एंड यू फॉलो दोस थिंग्स। So this is called as slavery and distributive justice. So Aristotle is considered as father of political science. Why? Because he has contributed many things for political science. The first one is he has formulated the best practicable state, the state which can be practically possible to attain. That's called best possible state. Secondly, he gave us the theory of classification of governments and constitutions. Thirdly, he gave us the theory of revolutions. Fourthly, he has given us the justification for slavery. And fifth one, he gave us the concept of justice from state point of view. And he also gave us the concept of citizenship from the point of view of the state. So, due to all these reasons, Aristotle is considered as the father of political science. In fact, there is one political philosopher called Ernest Barker who says Aristotle is a great intellectual, he's a scholarly philosopher, and human civilization may not see such a person with originality of theories. So, this is how Aristotle is considered as the father of political science. Now, we have completed the first block, and in tomorrow's class, the next class will be completing the second block. So, for every two classes, we'll be completing one block or two blocks. Likewise, and in the end, we'll discuss some of the important questions. So, you don't need to worry about the important questions. We'll definitely give. You have to follow the lectures and lecture series, and will definitely benefit the students on all the issues. So, the Greek political thought has three important philosophers: Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. In these philosophical issues, we have discussed the important features of Greek philosophy. We have also discussed the important principles of sophist philosophy. We have also discussed about the theory of knowledge given by Socrates, and we also discussed Plato's ideal state, and we discussed Aristotle's classification of governments, Aristotle's theory of revolutions, Aristotle's concept of citizenship, Aristotle's concept of justice, Aristotle's theory of best practicable state. According to Aristotle, state is a natural phenomenon. It comes into existence for the sake of providing good life to the people. State comes into existence for providing good life to the people. Providing good life to the people is the aim and objective of Aristotle. So, this is how Aristotle has provided us these philosophical foundations of Greek philosophy. And the philosophy of Greeks is much more enriched with the philosophies of later thinkers in the medieval period and modern period. And in the coming classes, we'll be discussing the philosophies of other European scholars. Thank you, friends. Thank you very much.